So I've been working on this, and they're wanting another, like, to make a whole album of stuff like that. And it's not easy. It's not easy to recreate what you did times 10 or whatever. So I've sent a whole bunch, but they kind of take a life of their own and go in different directions. And I'm trying to work with the same palette in some ways. And one of the comments I got about what from the last few tracks I sent was, it's okay, but the endings need to be bigger, faster, and nastier.
Oh.
And I wrote back saying, sure, we'll do it. I've never been asked to be bigger, faster, and nastier in my life.
What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, your weekly insight into all things production, library, and sync music. Whether you are watching on YouTube or listening to the audio podcast on the go, I just want to thank you for spending part of your day here with me. I know you have a ton of options out there, so please know that I appreciate you. I also appreciate our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52 Qs who really do keep all of this going. If you want to learn more about how you can support 52 Qs and also get a ton of extra subscriber perks like live streams and workshops and Zoom feedback sessions and all of that, then be sure to stick around because I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, we've got a fantastic topic for you. I'm going to be joined by expert trombonist, community member, longtime supporter of 52 Qs, and winner of our recent What's My Superpower Composer Quest, Mr. Nathan Toft joins me on the podcast. We're going to talk about his path to production music. We're going to talk about how he uses trombone in his cues in new and unique ways, and what happens when you explore outside of your superpower. So you definitely want to stick around for that. And then a little bit later in today's episode, I'm going to be playing through my latest hip-hop dramedy cue called Task and You Shall Receive, which is a hybrid dramedy and tasking cue. So you definitely want to stick around for that. Now, as far as my weekly check-in, to be honest, I don't have a lot to report. Now, that's not because a lot isn't happening in my life. Yes, I'm super busy all the time. But the reason that I don't have anything to report, because as I'm recording this, it is Monday morning, 6:30 a.m. on a Monday. And I recorded last week's podcast on Friday morning. So it's only been the weekend. And as I've talked about, I believe on the podcast, I don't really work on the weekends. And so this leads me to, why am I doing this on a Monday? Well, typically I record the podcast on Wednesday mornings before I, do all my Full Sail stuff. I'll be in the studio by 5:30, 6 o'clock or so, and I will record the podcast super early in the morning on a Wednesday. But every now and then things will kind of happen. Meetings will get scheduled, clients will get booked, one-on-one sessions with students, either in Germany or in India or whatever. And so that happened last week, where I actually wasn't able to record the podcast episode on Wednesday or even on Thursday because Full Sail or clients or students or community or life just, got in the way. And so because, we published the podcast on Thursdays, Wednesday didn't happen, Thursday didn't happen, and Shannon will back me up on that. I was in knots, like, when am I going to record the podcast? And Shannon just said, Dave, it's okay. Shannon, for anybody new, Shannon, my wife, Mrs. 52 Qs, and my business partner in the community and running the 52 Qs business. She said, Dave, it's okay. Take a breath. The world is not going to stop turning. Nothing bad is going to happen if you don't release a podcast on Thursday. And so after I got over feeling, super imposter-y and I'm letting everybody down, of course nothing bad's going to happen. So we released it on a Friday. That ended up coming out like Friday afternoon. By the time it was all edited, like 5 o'clock into the day, The video posted on Saturday morning. I don't know what it means to the algorithm and the numbers. To be honest, I don't really care. I just wanted to make sure to get a podcast episode out when I could. And there's something to be said about the whole YouTuber pressure thing that I try to avoid and don't want to get into. But the bigger takeaway is that because where I had blocked off when I was going to do the podcast in my week, which was Wednesday, it left me no fallback position, which then brought in anxiety and feeling like I'm letting people down. And remember, one of my kryptonites is overpromising and underdelivering, which leads me to why I am recording on a Monday morning. First thing Monday morning, before I've written any music this week. I think I might have answered a couple of client emails this morning, but I am looking to rearrange some things so that I'm doing the big work first, which I've done a podcast episode on this. And if I remember, we'll put a link up here. It's the episode on eating your frogs first. And this is a Mark Twain quote, which says, if it's your job to eat a frog, then eat it first thing in the morning. That way, I'm paraphrasing the rest of this, that way the rest of the day is downhill from there. And if it's your job to eat 2 frogs, then eat the biggest one first. And it's really a message about procrastination, but also a message about project management and time budgeting. And so that's it, is take care of your business on the front end, and in my case, the front end of the week, so that the rest of the week can be freed of feeling like there's something you need to be doing or something big that's coming down the road in a Indiana Jones boulder kind of way, or Sword of Damocles kind of way, or you just this big thing. And I've lived for the longest time with Wednesday mornings being a big thing, and then when something comes in, and then it just kind of blows up. So we're gonna try this. We're gonna try to work on the heavy boulders, the frogs. And I don't mean that disparaging. I love doing the podcast. Love it, love it, love it. So I don't want you to listen to this and like, oh man, he doesn't like doing the podcast. Nothing could be further from the truth. But as far as a task and an action item in my weekly routine, then the podcast looms very large, and it looms very large on a Wednesday. So what happens if I do record the podcast on a Monday? So that the Wednesday is the fallback position, not Friday and Saturday. Parenthetically, there's also not garbage trucks on a Wednesday. I've lost count the number of times a good take for a podcast episode has been ruined by 2 garbage trucks going by. First the garbage truck and then the recycling truck, and then the mowers and everything. But not a lot happening on Wednesday morning. So we're going to see how that goes. But I just encourage you, just like you would budget money for your bills, pay your bills early so that when you go to the movies or go out to eat, you can do so with the confidence and freedom that everything is taken care of. So that later in the week, if I do want to just dink around in Serum, or if I do want to record a mead bottle and make my own sample instrument, then there's not other things I quote unquote should be doing, and my brain is released and my creativity is released from any sense of obligation or feeling like you are mismanaging your time. So we're going to go for that. And again, a huge shout out to Leo who edits these episodes. I'm getting these to him on a Monday morning, and hopefully it makes his job easier as well. All right, so for today's episode, I am so thrilled to welcome the most recent winner of our Composer Quest, which was a What's My Superpower Composer Quest. And Nathan Toft joined us. He is a super talented trombone player. He has taken the album accelerator over 52 Qs. And so really thrilled to talk to him about his process, about how he uses trombone in expected ways, but also unexpected ways, and how it feels to kind of break out of your superpower rut. So here is my recent interview with Nathan Toft. I am so happy to welcome to the podcast Mr. Nathan Toft, winner of our What's Your Superhero Composer Quest with his cue Suspicion Commission, which we are going to listen to here in just a little bit. But Nathan, welcome to the 52 Cues podcast, my friend.
So good to be here, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Man, I was so excited. I'm excited for everybody that participated, but when you won for the Suspicion Commission, and if memory serves me, now this one wasn't one of the cues that you worked on with the album accelerator, was it?
No, it was new from sometime in 2024.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But just to see your name come across, because we've worked together. We've had an album accelerator session. You've participated in the actual album accelerator, and I know I've name dropped you a couple of times on the podcast, admittedly without your permission. And as I look back, I'm like, maybe I should have asked. But you're a trombone player.
I am, and I gotta. You picked up on my experiment with My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, and you played it as a cue of the week a while back.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh God, not that one. I was just checking my microphone. But no, that started off the whole trombone thing, because I honestly didn't think the setup I have here. I'm just in a basement, and there's no sound treatment or anything down here. I really didn't think that the sound I would get was going to work. But no, you encouraged me to figure it out and keep going with it. So thank you to that.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, I lasered in almost immediately on the trombone sound, because it's not everybody plays trombone, and in a world where we production music composers are oft to reach for a VST before even the instrument we play, says the guy with a drum set literally in the background of the shot. That's your superpower. And I am so glad to hear how you have really embraced that into your workflow. You made a whole album featuring that. But before we get into all that, because we're going to talk about that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into production and library music. And you're also a teacher. So, man, how did you come into the 52 Cues community?
Yeah, well, I guess like a lot of people, I really discovered it during the pandemic. I've always had an interest in sound recording. I played around with Audacity and did podcasts with my students and that. But I've always been curious. But it was so then I discovered Reaper, which is the DAW that I'm using, and I mainly got it because I wanted to just use it to improve my trombone playing skills, like hear myself, for practice sessions. Mm-hmm. And then that opened up a massive can of worms for me. And then I went on this big mission to find brass samples that I could use for sheet music I was writing at the time to make it sound authentic. And it never did. So that didn't go anywhere. But through that whole process, I found you, I found Stevie B, shout out to him as well. And that's really where it took off. I started out putting my tracks out on Audio Jungle and Pond 5, and they were awful. And I couldn't figure out what it was, but just by following like people like you and Stevie B, I was able to figure it out and go along. So that's what started it all off for me.
Now you mentioned your students. Tell us what you do professionally.
So I'm an elementary school teacher here in Canada. I teach mainly grade 4 and grade 5, which works out to like 8, 9-year-olds.
Right.
And I'm a general elementary teacher, so I teach like English, math, and to the kids. And but in the past, I've also like as an extension of their English program, I've created podcasts, and I've occasionally got to teach music. So I teach recorder, those little plastic flute things that
playing hot cross buns.
Exactly, yeah. That's a whole other tangent we can get onto, because I've improved on hot cross buns for the kids. But so I've played around with a bit of recording with the kids and that kind of thing. So that's my day job, and then these last couple of years, I've been really pushing into production music and coming up with tracks.
Yeah. So how does the trombone play into all this? I mean, is this what you studied in college? Were you, like me, a band nerd all the way up, through middle school and high school?
Pretty much. I remember I was 6, 7 years old, and the high school band came to play in our gym, and they were probably a really awful band, to be honest. I grew up in I mean, to be fair, I grew up in a pretty small town. I don't know if you know your Canadian geography, but between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg, so pretty off the beaten track. It was a gold mining town. Um, so it would have been a tiny band that came, but I remember I was so focused on playing the trombone. There was my father's a high school teacher, and he had a teaching friend that gave lessons. So I took lessons from him. Anyway, long story short, I ended up going to study music here in Ottawa at the University of Ottawa, did a degree in music, and played off and on. Recently, like last 10 years, I've been playing mainly big band stuff. There's a band here called Big Band Ottawa that I play with regularly. So yeah, I fit in practicing and keeping up as much as I can, keeping up the chops. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I'd say you have. And tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you found in working in the trombone into a production music application, because it's not, if you play like saxophone or guitar or even like harmonica, like that's like, all right, I can clearly see that. But trombone, unless you're, Will Riker, from Star Trek: The Next Generation, trombone, and Trombone Shorty, that's a very short list of nationally
well, no, that's two
recognized
heroes right there for me. And
there you go. But
well, one big challenge for recording it is finding a time to actually record it, because I'm in my house. So, and I've taken up this routine of being up pretty early before my work day. So I do that.
Fellow miracle morning.
Yeah. So I do an hour before, and that's not going to work. I'm not playing trombone while the rest of the family is sleeping. So I get everything figured out. I'll work out a melody just like on my keyboard, and then later I'll record the trombone separately. And it's interesting with that. I'll often then change what I had thought because it'll fit on the slide better, or I tend to think better when I have the trombone in my hand than on a keyboard. So I'll do that. And it seems to work. But one of the challenges is just finding times when it's acceptable to have a trombone going in the household.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. You can't just put that in headphones, really. So. I was going to say that's the reason why a lot of the tracks I have a mute of some kind stuck in it. So
yeah, recently I've gotten back into like recording live drums, and I've the exact same thing. Right, I can't start wailing away on a drum set at 5:30 in the morning at all. So I totally get it. Yeah, and like drum sets, especially like jazz drums, there's a kind of a narrow lane that sound can be appropriate, especially if you're not necessarily wanting to make it a punchline. But speaking of punchline, you've incorporated trombone very cleverly, I might add, into a full album of music. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Yeah, and the album's called Funny Bone Street. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I've had to say the name, but yeah, so there's sort of a Sesame Street connection there to the name. But yeah, every track well, it's not always the trombone is the most dominant there, but every track does have live trombone in it. I didn't really think of it as a children's album at the time, but it's certainly quirky and all over the place that it's being marketed as a kid's album. Yeah, and I think it works. It's certainly not what you would expect, I think, when you're looking through a library.
So I would love to play one of these cues from the album. And which one do you think is a good illustration of your trombone chops here?
I think Preacher Dan would be a good place to start. That's kind of a bluesy one that somewhat inspired by Trombone Shorty, maybe.
Okay.
Kind of.
All right. Let's take a listen to Preacher Dan. Man, that is that is so good. That is so, and you recorded that just in the very room you're in now?
In the very room I'm in now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That trombone sounds
I'm
so
as
good.
astonished as you are. Yeah.
Well, and it goes to show you several things come to mind listening to that. First of all, a fantastic performance. If it's not a good performance,
Thanks.
the mics don't matter at all. But it's such a good performance that leans into those trombonisms, like the sliding, all the
Yeah,
things that are idiomatic to the trombone. You lean into, and you lean into throughout the whole album. But it's not just a bunch of trombone gags. So I think that's really really strong. And it just goes to show you how when you feature something that is your superpower, that it elevates everything else. Because this would be so difficult, virtually impossible to try to program all of these little nuances in a virtual instrument. And I'm sure you have, haven't you?
I've tried. Yeah, no, it's I've never. You're probably the same with drum patches, I'd imagine, for a lot of them. But I've never been happy with any of the brass VSTs I come across, especially for what I want to do. They're either too orchestral and they just don't work the idiom I'm trying to
Yep.
play, or they just sound fake. And maybe I need more time figuring out how to play around with key switches and articulations and all that stuff. But it's
But you
so
could
much
just
easier to play it on your own.
yeah, or you could just pick up your horn.
Well, yeah, and you're done. So yeah, exactly.
Oh man, so really, really well done. And this album was was a product of the album Accelerate.
Yeah.
Now, if you've watched the podcast and everything, or if you've listened to the podcast, we've talked about this album Accelerator. And for anybody that doesn't know, and I promise this isn't a commercial for the album Accelerator, but it is a self-guided program that takes you from album concept through writing, into finding a home for it, pitching it, how to put the email together, and it culminates in a one-on-one kind of album review session where I sit down and I go over the album. We talk album order, we talk titles, we talk about your pitch, where you're thinking about sending it off to, and this whole album was a product of that, right, Nathan?
Definitely it was, yeah. And that last part that you mentioned is the whole reason I signed on for it. Like, yes, I could pay for a bunch of videos and work my way through it, and I have. But the fact that you were there, it made it a lot more real, and worthwhile for me. So I think I had, if I remember correctly, there were two sessions with you actually. I
Mm-hmm.
think, is that right?
Well,
So one that,
there's one 90-minute session, and I think
yeah.
you booked up another one
I'm okay. I
outside of
must
the
have, yeah.
accelerator. Yeah.
There was, yeah, something. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right course, and then we did the last one, and that is where the real value of the whole process was, because it gave me something to shoot for, knowing that someone like you that is successful in the whole industry
Mm.
can, tell me honestly if this is really the right path, or maybe I should invest in a better microphone or whatever it is, right?
Clearly not, because you're crushing it, man.
Yeah. So no, it's been great, and don't get me wrong, the videos and the articles were really helped to get me like on a focus, and what to do and how to drive things, especially for the pitches. Actually helped me for finding some libraries. I mean, I was very fortunate to find the library as quickly as I did. But yeah,
and that's the other thing. This
yeah,
is a success story. This is over at the Likha Music International
yep,
website, into their library, and it's been there a few months. So
yeah, since January. Yeah.
yep. Any sniffs in TuneSat? Have you pushed this up to TuneSat or anything
Yeah,
yet?
I have pushed a few in. I haven't seen anything there yet. They are a brand new library. They, I think, launched everything in January. So I get to say
Gotcha.
I'm one of the original composers with them. But other things I've sent on to them, they've been really interested in as well. So that's cool. So they're starting, I think, to see that I'm not just the trombone guy, which
Right.
I'm happy to be, but there's been interest in some other music I've been doing. Like I've been doing heavy metal cello, and I've done pulse kind of sound design tracks that
Yeah,
they've liked as well. Yeah.
and I think that's one of the dangers of flexing a superpower, especially one as niche as yours,
Yeah.
is you don't want to be pigeonholed. You don't want to be just the trombone guy. Just like I don't want to be just the sports hip hop guy. You know what I mean? And so I think you're doing that, and you're very well-deserved win for the Composer Quest, the Superhero Composer Quest, demonstrates that. So walk us through. You won for Suspicion Commission. And actually, before you tell us about it, let's take a listen to Suspicion Commission. And then when we come back, Nathan's going to kind of tell us all about it. All right, so that was Suspicion Commission, the I guess you could say award-winning cue, won our What's Your Superpower Composer Quest a few months ago. So while it does have a little bit of the DNA, that we heard in Funny Bone, it feels like a step forward. Tell us about that cue and your process.
Yeah, I think I've evolved since the Funny Bone album. That started out as a dramedy, but I kept layering it up, and I think what's new for me is there's kind of at least my version of a dance beat to it that comes in later that gives it a little extra oomph. I still I think I guess it's just style. Anything that I seem to write still comes out as being very happy, even when I'm trying to be evil and and all that. I think that somehow just comes through. So I tried to, just like from watching what you do, I tried to just keep layering it and build up the interest. I mean, it's the same melody over and over again, but it keeps adding and building on itself and rises hopefully to a nice climax for someone that wants to use it in TV.
Yeah, and for the record, that one isn't signed yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's not yet. So I'm have at it. I have a whole album of other trombone music if you want it.
I'm talking to you, publishers, libraries, listening. This is your guy. Yeah. Look him up. Of course, we'll have contact information.
Yeah, nathantoft.ca.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Smash that subscribe. But no. I definitely want to give you your flowers and give you the opportunity. It's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, is not just say he won, let's all give him a round of applause, but really shine a big spotlight on some amazingly talented people we have in the 52.
Well, thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, let's go even further away out of the trombone pocket. Tell us about Tachycardic Vibrations, because now, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's a different direction. I think 2024 for me is marking the beginning of me discovering pigments. So I've been playing around with that. Still have lots I'd love to learn on it, but it's proving to be a good creative spark anyway. So the library I'm with though it's calling for pulse tension kind of cues. Um, so that's what I did. I was playing around with sound designy kind of stuff. A lot of those cues, from what I hear, have a lot of like siren kind of effects going on.
Mhm.
So pulled out the trombone and did the glisses and all that kind of stuff, and then put it through what I keep saying is like way too many effects and getting this really scratched, garble, horrible sound. But it seems, in my opinion, to fit really well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you bring any trombone samples into Pigment's granular engine?
I haven't done that, so that's something next for me to figure out. And I want to. I've been watching what you've been doing with Serum. It's
Hmm.
maybe it'll be this summer's project is
Yeah,
to work
I
on
feel
stuff
it, and
through.
all that downtime you have as a school teacher. But
Exactly.
let's take a listen to Tachycardic Vibrations. So that was a tachycardic vibration. I got to tell you what, man, I about had a cardiac event when that first hit came in. That was really good. And I got to be honest,
Thanks.
I don't think I've heard this side of you. I've heard more dramedy, the funny bone stuff. Obviously, we worked on that, but this is really good. And I think somebody could pay me. I will give you $1 million to point out the trombone, and I'm not sure I would have said there it is right there, because you've done a fantastic job of weaving it into a texture that's absolutely appropriate for this style.
Yeah,
Now,
that was my hope, was just to make it fit in with the style. And I didn't really want it to necessarily sound like a trombone, but I wanted to make it sound like something you hadn't heard before as well.
which is absolutely vital. Like if you
Yeah.
listen, especially like current trailer trends, and especially like in horror, the idea isn't that they have a melody per se. Instead, they have kind of the hook is a sound designed hook. It's an interesting sound. It's a very, very odd. You can't really put your finger on what it is, but that becomes the branded identity of that cue. And so we
Mm.
see this a lot in horror trailers. I'm definitely getting kind of horror ominous vibes out of this, with all the kind of the dynamic and the jump scare moments and that kind of thing. But you said you have a library who is interested in this. Is that, yeah? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
the same library. They heard this track actually. So I guess this one is almost signed.
Yeah.
Um, so they're looking. So I've been working on this, and they're wanting another, like to make a whole album of stuff like that. And it's not easy. It's not easy to recreate what you did times 10 or whatever. So I've sent a whole bunch, but they kind of take a life of their own and go in different directions. And I'm trying to work with the same palette in some ways. And one of the comments I got about what from the last few tracks I sent was, it's okay, but the endings need to be bigger, faster, and nastier.
Oh.
And I wrote back saying, sure, we'll do it. I've never been asked to be bigger, faster, and nastier in my life. So anyway, I take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, do those? I don't even think those adjectives applied to any Canadians, you know. So, now this is absolutely fantastic, and I love how you're using your superpower. Like, it kind of keeps coming back to this, because this is something that just comes out of you. And so if you're watching this right now and you're like, well, I do this, or I play this, or I want to make this type of music, you can blend those. You can absolutely blend those together. And I encourage you to find that thing that comes out of you most naturally, because here we have somebody doing kids music, followed by dramedy, followed by some really, what was it? Nastier, louder. What was it?
Faster, bigger, nastier, pulsing. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah. So what is going to be your approach to crafting 9 more iterations of this? How are we going to solve that?
I'm about 2/3 of the way in, and a few of them kind of veered off in their own direction. I'm happy with all of them, but they may not like fit the whole album concept. So I've gone back to using the same, like this one that you just heard. I've gone back to use that as a template and tried to recreate it from there. Some of the tracks I didn't put trombone in and used other things, because I'm getting to know Pigments as well. I'm discovering all these cool effects, which maybe is part of the reason why it's veered off in different directions. But yeah, so I'm just revisiting, trying to go back to that original template. That's my strategy right now. And we'll see. I'm still waiting to see for feedback from the last round that I sent off. So
yeah,
we'll see.
It's too big. It's too nasty.
Yeah.
All right. So after these, what are some of the other things that you like to do? I know we have a couple of other cues that you sent along. Is there one of these that I can play that kind of shows maybe a different side of Nathan?
A completely different side is the cello one called, what is it called? You better hide. Yeah, You Better Hide. All my titles are starting to get really similar with each other. Yeah, You Better Hide. And there was a brief for cello music that was heavy metal. So there's a band called Apocalyptica that does Metallica covers, and the library was looking for things that sounded like that. And luck had it that Museo has Apocalyptica's sample library, whatever it's called, right on there. So that worked. So yeah, that's what this one is. It's 4 cellos. I was trying to recreate their sound. I was actually even ventured. I was very proud of myself because I ventured into where cello 1 is and cello 2 is on this side and just down the middle. So that was another step for me, was just even being aware of that stuff. You know, trombone, you sit in the center of the band and you play your notes.
Right. So is this a trombone free track?
It's a trombone free track. It's cello only.
All right. So if you don't like trombone, this is the one. This is the one free. But if you don't like who doesn't like trombone, man?
Maybe I'll do the same thing, like heavy metal trombone.
There you go. Dude, I'm surprised you haven't done it already.
Yeah, it's got to come up.
Let's take a listen to You Better Hide. That was You Better Hide from Nathan Toft. Nathan, thank you so much for sending this along. And you were right. That is vastly different than the other things that we've listened to
Yeah,
today. And even tachycardic vibrations, I could really still kind of hear the Toft DNA in there, I think. But this is really different and very brave
thanks.
to have all of these really exposed cello parts, right? And you can't hide it in reverb, you can't layer it, with impacts and sonic booms and damaged drums and everything. So these are all programmed. These aren't live recorded.
It's all programmed, and it comes down. They're not fast to put together, that's for sure. It's all, the arrangement is everything. I find it's the effects are, maybe, I don't know, in my opinion, maybe 10% of it. It's what you're arranging in the first place, I think, that really helps sell this one.
Yeah, and the attention to detail and all the articulation switching. I think it's so tempting to try to find a patch that you can just kind of mash some strings, some fingers on the keys, and then you get good string sounds. But the real devil is in the details here. And so tell us a little bit about how you approach when you tackle something like this, which has really complex articulation switching. Just last week, I think we had the episode on orchestral articulations, and how spiccato sounds different than staccato, or Bartok pits sounds different than regular pits. So how is your process? Do you do key switches? Do you put things on different lines? Do you record a pass all in legato and then manually? Tell us a little bit about how you got that performance out of a VST.
I guess I kind of view it as sculpting. So it's just sort of this vague thing that it's all, for the most part, the same patch. And then I'll go back and tinker with it. I'll put all the different articulations on different tracks. I have a hard time with just making sense of key switches on one track. So it's just visual. I like to see everything on a separate line. Saying that, the library I'm working with, the instrument library, it's pretty good. So it doesn't always require too intense articulations if I choose the right ones, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I start with is I've grabbed like a heavy metal track, just a regular heavy metal track from, I think it was Atomica that I found. And I did that as a modeling kind of exercise. So I get the heavy metal rhythms with the chunky, the chugging guitar, and sometimes try to mimic what the guitar, the drums are doing. And then after a point, once I've kind of recreated, not exactly, I'll get rid of the reference track, and then it just takes off in its own direction, I find, and becomes something different. But yeah, the articulation is just a lot of like coming back to it the next day, just taking on a little piece every day.
Yeah. It reminds me of like, the scene in Jurassic Park where they're bent over the velociraptor, just like using a toothbrush. That's what it feels like. It feels like archaeologists unearthing these delicate, teeny tiny bones. And you have
very much so.
Yeah. It's such a small, fine, detailed thing that makes an exponential difference when you put it on a track.
And I'm in awe at the end of it. It's like, where did that come from? Like, I'm still amazed what this can come out of it. Yeah,
you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. And the mix sounds great. And even though you're in your untreated room, in your house up there in Ottawa, you're killing it, man. And so, again, congratulations on all of your success. Congratulations on winning the Composer Quest for What's Your Superpower. And I think you not only embrace that concept of leveraging your superpower, but also embrace, what we're doing here at 52Qs, which is kind of coming together, putting things out, getting feedback, also leaving feedback. And you mentioned during the accelerator when we were talking about the accelerator, how having me kind of come in and help you along was crucial. And that's baked into what we do here. And so I appreciate you. Thank you for your continued support. And thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah, it's been an amazing experience so far. So appreciate everything you're doing for everyone in the community as well.
Once again, a huge word of thanks to Nathan for joining me today on the podcast. And like I said, we're going to have all of his links in the description below. So please be sure to check those out. We're going to take a quick break, and an alternate version of me is going to tell you all about how you can join the community here at 52Qs and also all of the perks we offer our subscribers. But when we return, we are going to be checking out Task and You Shall Receive, which is a dramedy cue which fuses tasking energy. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers of 52Qs, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly cue breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52Qs. You can just go to 52qs.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or if maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers? Then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52qs.com. That was Task and You Shall Receive, a dramedy cue that has all this tasking energy. Now, if you want to see this cue get written from scratch for our family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52Qs, you can check that out. We've got the archive over 2 live streams over the last few weeks. And for you family and friends subscribers, tomorrow I will be releasing a complete cue breakdown of this, including what's the deal with tasking energy and what does that even mean and how do you fuse that? And speaking of tasking energy, this coming Monday for the family and friends subscribers of 52Qs, I also have a workshop on tasking cues and what are tasking cues and what does that even mean and what's like the harmonic structure and rhythmic structure and how does it differ from dramedy and tension and even corporate cues. So that is a workshop coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is July 22nd, 2024. And if you're watching this way off in the future and 2024 was in the distant past, then we have the archive that you can check out for our family and friends subscribers. But that is going to do it for me this week. Again, thank you so much for being with me. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, then why don't you share the love and maybe consider subscribing or liking, or if you're listening to the audio on the go, then a review in your podcast app goes a long way. Now, you definitely want to tune in next week, where our topic will be, in the light of all of these changes in our industry, in technology, in AI, and are composers going extinct? Are there things that, as a composer today, that maybe in 5 years or 10 years might not be any part of our jobs anymore? So what part of the industry is going away? What should we be legitimately concerned with? And how do we navigate all of that? And we're gonna borrow a page from animator Phil Tippett. So you definitely want to tune in for that. But once again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a stellar week 29, and I know that you're going to have an amazing week coming up. How do I know that, friends? Because I know, trust, and have the full confidence that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2024 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Qs, head over to 52qs.com.